In this video, I'll talk about centering text and images horizontally using Cascading Style Sheets, otherwise called CSS. And style sheets control the visual presentation and formatting of elements in a HTML web page. So here I have some Latin paragraphs, which is part of something called lorem ipsum. It's used for typography. And in between the paragraphs, I have two images. The last one is this double rainbow thing, and the one on top is a kingfisher with a turtle in the background lurking under the water. It's probably looking for, although I've never seen it, looking for baby ducklings that usually hatch during the springtime. Turtles are hungry and they also need to eat. Now, before I talk about centering elements in CSS using current day standards, I'll go back a little bit, and probably in the 1990s, the way that you centered things back then is that they had these formatting tags that you can put in your HTML document. If I wanted to center the header 3 tag up here called lorem ipsum, I would wrap the header 3 tag in a center tag, and that would center the text, and it would also work with the image. But that's not the way we do things in the modern day world, because the formatting tags took a back seat. That includes center, font, and frame set. What came in the place of that were styling properties. To center the H3 tag using a style, I would add a style attribute with a property of text-align, whose value is center. And that would also leave the heading centered as well. But what happened is that there were a lot of these styling properties added, so you can have a whole bunch of styling codes added into your HTML document for a single element, and that these were repeated over and over and over again, because if I wanted to apply the same style for the same tag, I would have, if I have another H3 tag below it, and if I wanted to retain that same style, I would need to copy and paste the style tag. And part of programming, which I know CSS is technically not programming because you're controlling just the visual aspects of things, but still is that same concept of you don't want to repeat yourself as much as possible, because if you want to change things later down the road, that introduces more work, because I would have to go do a mass search and replace if you're feeling lucky, or you can manually change everything. And that's a lot of work. So what people decided to do is to introduce this thing called a style sheet. And inside the head tag of my HTML document, I would supply a link to a style sheet and specify an href, which would be the location of the style sheet. And inside the style sheet, I would select the tags that I want to apply properties to. For example, if I wanted to select the heading 3 tag, I would do h3 space open curly brace, closing curly brace, which in programming looks a lot like a code block. But again, this is not programming, this is CSS. But there's similarities. And within the code block, I would specify the styling properties I want to apply to that element. So to center it, I would do text-align, center. Save the document, refresh, and it's still centered because it read in this style sheet, saw that I've selected the H3 tag and set a text align property to center. So if I have another H3 tag, it would also apply that same property to it. And the same with any web page that uses this particular style sheet. So if someone later down the road's like, oh, we don't want things centered anymore, we want them moved over to the right, you're like, no problem, I'll just change this one file, save it, and now they're all over on the right-hand side. So that's the one advantage of using style sheets. Now, the images, on the other hand, if I were to try the same thing, and set text align of center, and refresh, the image isn't centered because it's not text, it's a picture. So I'd have to go about doing this differently in CSS, and the way you would go about doing it is that you would change the margins. And I would tell it margin dash left and set that to auto, margin dash right and set that up to auto. And since the left and right margins are both set to auto, when I refresh the page, it's not centered. So that apparently does not work for some reason. And the reason is because with images, they have a display property whose value is inline. Inline elements do not respect vertical margins that I try to set, and also horizontal margins that are set to auto. An inline element, you can kind of think of it as words in a paragraph. Automatic margins would be set to 0 since inline elements are surrounded by text. And this particular selection, you can think of it as an inline element. This entire paragraph, though, is thought to be a block level element. And block level elements, they'll pay attention to the automatic margins that you have set on them. So if I were to change the display from inline to block for this image and refresh the page, it now pays attention to the left and right margins that I set to auto, and now the images appear to be centered. Another shorthand way that you can set the margins is what people commonly do is do a margin colon. And you can specify, one variation of this is you can specify 2 parameters. The first parameter is the vertical margins, and they set them to 0. And the second parameter are the horizontal or left and right margins, which you can set to auto. I'll save the file and refresh, and the images are still centered. That's it for this video, and of course, thanks for watching.